Ed Lazear, good morning.
Hi, Tom. How are you?
Well, I'm better than the president. You have sat in the Oval Office and tried to explain to a president what to do after a grim report. What should President Obama do after a grim report?
Well, I think what the president should do is what he should have done a few years ago, and that is focus on the long term rather than the short term. I don't want to criticize the president. Obviously, he came in feeling he had to do something. We did a lot during our term and that period in autumn of 2008. So I certainly can't criticize him for taking aggressive action. But now we're in the long term. So if you think about had we focused on the long run rather than the short run back in 2009, I think things would have been a lot better. And what I think we need to do now is to not focus on jump starting, not think about, this is a call to action, we got to get things moving again. I wouldn't put it that way. I would say what we need to do is we need to focus on creating an economy that is going to be conducive to long-term growth and to strong not only job growth but also strong wage growth as we go into the future. That's what I would be looking to doing.
Well, let's bring up the number if we could. Bring up the number right now, Rex, if you would, because this is one of those fictions here of, well, we did something. We expanded the Fed's balance sheet. Wonderful work by Michael Dart at MKM Partners. There's been a 26% increase in high-powered money because all that expansion of the balance sheet went over to excess reserves sitting on the bank's balance sheet, the commercial bank's balance sheet. Ed Lazear, have we really done enough to stimulate the economy, to higher nominal GDP, to create investment, to create that spirit of job formation?
Well, I think we've done too much. And the reason I say we've done too much is that we've done things that have been ineffective. I would argue that most of the stimulus that we saw, things like, like cash for clunkers, things like credits for first-time home buyers, were really not very effective in doing anything other than just moving purchases around from one month to another. And again, I would argue that what we should be doing is focusing more on the long run. So the cost of all of those policies has been that we've increased the size of the federal budget by a very large margin. In 2008 we were at 20.8% of GDP. Now we're at about 25% of GDP, and that's not an entitlements problem. That's not a long-run problem. That's a short-run problem. It's something that we did by policy, and we can undo by policy. And I think we need to get our way back to that. Now, the criticism of that position, and I think it's one that is justifiable, but I don't think it's correct, is that, look, this is not the time to cut government spending, because if we do that, we'll send the economy into some kind of a contraction. I don't buy that, and the reason I don't buy that is because I don't think that the expansion was effective in stimulating the economy, and I don't think that reducing expenditure would be detrimental to long-term or even short-term economic growth.
There's a real academic debate here. First of all, let's get a quote from Lazear from a couple months ago, which speaks to these ideas. The prescription for the American labor market is simple: low taxes, avoidance of excessively burdensome regulation, and open markets here and abroad. Of that mix, and I think, Ed, to Paul Krugman's Keynes speech at Cambridge, the politicians have to step in. Does a job credit get it done? An action task?
Yeah, I don't. By a job credit, you mean something like a payroll tax cut on the employer side? There are a lot of ways to do job credits. Again, I think of those things as primarily short-term solutions that don't have any long-term impact. If you think about what employers are going to do, I don't think that what economists always refer to as the elasticity of demand is going to be very great with respect to a short-term tax cut, because when an employer puts on a worker, they're thinking not only of the short-term, 1 year cost of that worker, but they're thinking about the implications for the longer term as well. And so, doing something that has kind of an instantaneous effect, I don't think is going to have any significant repercussions for the labor market.
Okay, we'll have to leave it there. Ed Lazear, thank you for coming out of class at Stanford University, the former chairman of the President's Council of Economic Advisors under President Bush.